Some people don't feel lonely, they feel misplaced. Like a book put on the wrong shelf, surrounded by stories that don't speak the same language. And after a while, you stop trying to be read at all. If you have few friends or none, you've probably asked yourself a quiet, uncomfortable question. Is something wrong with me, because the world seems to reward connection so loudly? Group chats buzzing at midnight. Laughter echoing in crowded rooms. Photos filled with people who seem effortlessly close. And then there's you, standing just outside that invisible circle, wondering why it never quite opens. But what if the silence around you isn't emptiness? What if it's something else entirely? There's a kind of loneliness that isn't about being unwanted, but about being unmatched. And that difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Most people bond over familiarity. Shared interests, shared humor, shared routines. It's like building bridges using identical pieces. Easy, predictable, stable. But if your mind doesn't work in patterns like that, if your thoughts stretch wider, deeper, or just differently, those bridges don't hold. So instead, you stand there holding something heavier. Something harder to translate. Psychologists sometimes talk about misalignments. Tiny moments where connection almost happens, but doesn't. You say something honest, and it lands wrong. You try to open up, but the response feels shallow. You laugh, but half a second too late. These moments are small, almost invisible, but over time, they pile up like dust in the corners of your identity. And eventually you learn. You learn to speak less, to observe more, to shrink certain parts of yourself just enough to fit, but never enough to feel real. This is how the invisible wall forms. It's not that people reject you outright. It's that they don't fully see you. Conversations stay on the surface. Connections feel temporary. And even when you're surrounded by others, there's this quiet awareness in the background. Like you're watching life happen from behind glass. And the more this happens, the more your brain adapts, because the human mind is designed to protect you, even if it means isolating you. When connection feels inconsistent or draining, your brain starts associating closeness with discomfort. Not pain exactly, but a kind of subtle exhaustion. The kind that comes from constantly translating yourself, from filtering your thoughts, from pretending that "I'm fine" is enough, so you withdraw. Not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually. You stop reaching out first, you stop explaining yourself. You start finding comfort in your own space, your own thoughts, your own rhythm. And from the outside, it looks like loneliness. But internally, something else is happening. You're building an inner world. A place where your thoughts don't need to be simplified. Where your emotions don't need to be justified. Where your curiosity can stretch without interruption. It's quiet there, but it's also honest. And this is where the misunderstanding begins. Because society often equates solitude with lack. If you don't have many friends, you must be missing something. Social skills. Confidence. Likability. But that assumption ignores a deeper truth. Not everyone is built for constant connection. Some people are wired for depth over frequency. Meaning over noise. They don't crave many interactions, they crave as real ones. The kind that feel rare, almost sacred. And when those aren't available, they don't settle easily, so instead of filling their lives with shallow connections, they choose something harder. They choose solitude, but solitude isn't empty. It's just misunderstood. Inside it, your mind sharpens. You start noticing things others overlook, subtle emotions, unspoken tensions, the quiet patterns in people's behavior. It's like your awareness turns inward and outward at the same time, creating a kind of clarity that doesn't come from crowds. You begin to understand people without needing to be surrounded by them. And that's where things start to shift, because what looks like social absence is often cognitive depth. You think longer before you speak. You feel more than you show. You analyze interactions long after they end. Not because you're overthinking, but because your mind doesn't skim the surface. It dives. And diving has a cost. It means you can't always enjoy the simplicity of casual interaction. Small talk feels like reading the first page of a book over and over again, never allowed to reach the story. You crave meaning, but meaning isn't always available. So you adapt again, you become selective. Not intentionally at first, it just happens. You start realizing that not every connection nourishes you. Some drain you. Some confuse you. Some make you feel more alone than being alone ever could. And slowly, your circle shrinks. Until one day, you look around and realize there's almost no one there. And that realization can hurt, because even if you value depth, you're still human. You still want to be understood. To be chosen. To feel like you belong somewhere without having to edit yourself first. So the question returns, heavier this time. Why is it so hard for me? The answer isn't simple. But part of it lies in something called emotional bandwidth. Everyone has a different capacity for emotional processing. Some people move quickly through feelings. They experience, react, and move on. Others absorb everything. They process slowly, deeply, sometimes painfully. If you're the second type, relationships require more from you. More energy, more reflection, more vulnerability. And when that effort isn't met with the same depth, it creates imbalance. It feels like you're giving something that isn't being received, like speaking a language no one else hears. So over time, your system protects itself by reducing exposure. Fewer people, fewer interactions, less risk of emotional mismatch. But here's the part no one tells you. This isn't a flaw, it's a filter. A very precise one. It filters out noise, superficiality, and connections that don't align with who you are beneath the surface. And while that filter can leave you with fewer people, it also means the ones who do pass through are different. Rarer. Deeper. More real. But until those people appear, you exist in this in-between space. Not fully connected. Not completely alone. Just waiting. And in that waiting, something powerful is quietly forming. Your relationship with yourself. Because when external connection is limited, internal connection grows. You start asking questions most people avoid. You confront thoughts that others distract themselves from. You sit with your own mind long enough to understand it. And understanding yourself is not a common skill. It's uncomfortable, sometimes overwhelming, but it's also transformative. You begin to notice your patterns, your triggers, your emotional rhythms. You learn what drains you, what energizes you, what feels authentic and what feels forced. And slowly, you stop trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for you. But there's still a tension, because part of you wonders if this path, this solitude, this depth, is actually leading somewhere, or if it's just a different kind of isolation. And that's where the story starts to turn. Because, what if this distance you feel from others isn't a sign that you're behind? What if it's a sign that you're developing something most people never do? Something quiet, invisible, but incredibly powerful. Not the ability to attract everyone, but the ability to truly understand yourself, others, and the spaces in between. And that kind of awareness comes with consequences. It changes how you see people, how you form connections, how you define belonging itself. But it also raises a deeper question, one that most people never stop to ask. If you've spent so long learning how to be alone, what happens when you finally meet someone who sees you clearly? Do you know how to let them in, or have you become so used to the invisible wall that even real connection feels unfamiliar? Oh, or have you become so used to the invisible wall that even real connection feels unfamiliar? Because here's the quiet consequence no one prepares you for. When you've spent years being unseen, being misunderstood, or simply being too much, or not enough in the wrong spaces, you don't just learn how to be alone. You learn how to protect your aloneness. It becomes safe, predictable, controlled. So when someone finally comes along, someone who listens a little deeper, who notices the things others miss, who meets you with the same quiet intensity, it doesn't immediately feel like relief. Sometimes it feels like danger, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they're stepping into a space you've carefully built walls around. You might hesitate, overanalyze their words, question their intentions, Pull back just when things start to feel real. And then comes the confusion. Why am I pushing away the one thing I've always wanted? But this, too, has a reason. Your mind isn't rejecting connection, it's trying to verify it. Because when you've experienced so many almosts, almost being understood, almost being accepted, you stop trusting things that feel right too quickly. You look for cracks, inconsistencies, signs that this too will fade. It's like standing in sunlight after years of living in shadow. Your eyes don't adjust immediately. Even warmth can feel overwhelming at first. So you retreat, just a little. And sometimes, that retreat creates the very distance you feared. This is the paradox of your superpower. The same depth that allows you to understand people so clearly can also make it harder to receive them. But here's where the shift begins. What if your solitude was never meant to be permanent? What if it was training? Not in the sense of preparing you to tolerate loneliness, but in teaching you something most people skip entirely. Discernment. You've learned the difference between noise and meaning, between attention and understanding, between presence and performance. You don't just connect, you recognize, and recognition is rare. It means that when you finally allow someone in, it won't be out of fear of being alone, it will be out of clarity. Choice. Alignment. But for that to happen, something inside you has to soften. Not the depth. Not the awareness. Just the defense, because not everyone is the same as those who couldn't meet you before. Some people won't require you to shrink. Some conversations won't exhaust you. Some connections won't feel like translation, they'll feel like as a rival. And when those moments come, they'll feel unfamiliar. Quietly powerful, but strange. You might not even recognize them at first, because they don't carry the chaos or intensity you've been conditioned to expect. They won't demand you to prove yourself. They won't rush you. They won't disappear the moment you show your real thoughts. They'll just stay. Consistently. Gently. Honestly. And that kind of connection doesn't shout. It whispers. So the shift isn't about becoming more social. It's not about forcing yourself into crowds or collecting people just to fill space. It's about learning to respond differently when something real appears. Instead of stepping back, immediately pause. Instead of assuming it will end, stay curious. Instead of analyzing every detail, allow yourself to experience. Because your mind already knows how to protect you. Now it needs to learn how to receive, and that takes practice. Small, uncomfortable steps. Letting a conversation go a little deeper than usual. Sharing a thought you'd normally keep to yourself. Trusting someone just enough to see how they respond, without deciding the outcome beforehand. Not everyone will meet you there. And that's okay, because your filter still matters. But it's no longer there to isolate you, it's there to guide you, to help you recognize the difference between those who only pass through your life, and those who are willing to sit with you in it. And slowly, something changes. You stop asking, why don't I have more people? And start asking, AFO actually understands me. That question leads you somewhere quieter, but far more meaningful, because having fewer connections isn't the absence of something. It's the refinement of it. It's choosing quality over quantity. Depth over distraction. Truth over comfort. And yes, it can feel lonely at times. There will still be nights where the silence feels heavier than usual. Moments where you wish things were easier, lighter, more effortless like it seems for everyone else. But those moments don't define you. They're just part of the space you've created, a space that isn't crowded, but is clear, clear enough for something real to enter. And when it does, you won't need to question it the same way. Because you'll feel the difference, not in grand gestures or perfect words, but in the absence of confusion. In the ease of being yourself without calculation. In the quiet sense that you don't have to perform to be accepted. That's something many people search for their entire lives, without ever finding. And you're closer to it than you think. Because everything you've gone through, the distance, the misalignment, the solitude, it didn't break your ability to connect. It refined it, sharpened it, turned it into something intentional, So now having few or no friends doesn't automatically mean something is missing. Sometimes, it means something is forming, something slower, deeper, more honest, a way of existing that isn't dependent on constant validation, but rooted in self-awareness and genuine connection. And that is not weakness. That is not failure. That is a different kind of strength. A quiet one. The kind that doesn't need a crowd to prove its worth. The kind that waits, not out of fear, but out of knowing. Knowing that the right connections won't require you to become someone else. They'll meet you where you already are, so if you've been feeling out of place, disconnected, or quietly alone in a world that seems too loud, maybe it's not because you don't belong. Maybe it's because you're not meant to belong everywhere. Only in the places that truly see you. And those places, those people do exist. They're just harder to find. But when you do, everything changes. Not because your life suddenly becomes full of people, but because the few who are there finally feel like home. And if this story felt like it was speaking directly to something you've never been able to explain, then maybe, just maybe, you're not as alone as you thought. Sometimes, all it takes is one voice to remind you that there are others out there who understand the silence too. And if you're still here, listening, feeling, reflecting, stay a little longer. Because the quiet ones often have the most powerful stories to tell.